right, starting chapter 4, 4.1, probability distribution. Okay, so this chapter, you gotta really stay on top of this stuff because it starts getting a little bit more tougher here. The first 3 chapters are quite easy. Now we just kind of kick it up a notch. Let's see. Okay, so probability distribution. First, we have 2 types of variables. Okay, so we have discrete variables and we have continuous variables. Okay, so discrete variables are ones where the variable only has certain values. It only has a certain number of values within a given range. Okay, continuous though has an infinite number of solutions in a data set or in a range of values. For instance, if I were to say how many students I have in my class, this is for discrete. Okay, I can only have in a class I can have up to like 32 kids. Okay, so my data set or my variable would be the number of students, but I could only have 1 student, 2 student, 3, 4, all the way up to 32. Okay, so I have a set number of actual students. I can't have an infinite number of solutions, or I can't have half a student. I can't have a third of a student. Okay, so discrete, we only have a certain amount of actual. There's a certain number of results, I guess you could say, or values. Okay, whereas continuous is an infinite number of solutions in the data set. So, for instance, in our class, in the morning, it goes from 8:17 to 10:45. Okay, there is a set, that's the range. But in that range, time is an infinite number of time or values within that range. So you could have 30 seconds, you could have 1 second, you could have a millisecond, you could have an hour, you could have 45 minutes, 30 minutes. Again, you could have so many different values for time. You could have, I don't know, after millisecond, decasecond, you get smaller and smaller and smaller. So there's an infinite number of actual values within that range that you have. Okay, so one of the examples I use is the sum of 2 dice. It's discrete, so sum of 2 dice, 2 dice. Okay, so you can only have, if I roll 2 dice or 2 dice, sorry. If I roll 2 dice, I could have a sum of 2 all the way up to 12. Okay, so my answers could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I can't have 1.5, 2.5. Okay, so if I roll them, I have just certain values. Okay, so 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 12. Okay, so discrete random variables usually contains whole numbers. Okay, usually contains whole numbers. Okay, so one example, so this, like I said, the number of kids and how many students I have in a class, I have from 1 to 32, those are whole numbers. There are instances where it could be a decimal. So for instance, or example would be your shoe size. There we actually have half sizes as well. So if you're a size 7, you can have a size 7.5, an 8, an 8.5, and 9. But it is still discrete because you can't have 8.25 shoe size or 8.75 shoe size. It doesn't happen. Okay, there's only certain ones you can have. Okay. Continuous random variable are ones that have an infinite number of solutions. So I just went through time. Okay, so we're talking about time. Within a set, you have infinite number of solutions, volume, okay, so on. So time, volume, like in say this cup here, it might be 500 milliliters, but you could have 1.1 milliliters, 1.11, 2.33. Like you have so many different amounts that you have within that value of 500. Okay, and these include all decimals. Okay, When some people explain the difference between the two, some people explain, oh, this has whole numbers, this has decimals, and that's not the definition. The definition is this has only certain values within the range. This has an infinite number of values within the range. Okay, weighted mean. Okay, this is actually how your mark is calculated. It's through a weighted mean. Okay, so we have, let's just write the formula out here. So weighted mean is equal to your x1 times it by the frequency plus x2 times its frequency, and so on, divided by the total frequency. Okay, so I say that this is how your marks calculated because you have knowledge, application, communication, and thinking. So knowledge and application are worth 30% of your mark, so that's a weight. It's weighted. Okay, and communication and thinking are worth 20%. So it's not just an average across all four because they're not all worth 25%. Knowledge, application are worth a little bit more, so they're weighted a little bit higher. Okay, so this is how you actually calculate your mark based on your categories. Okay, so we multiply each number, so x1, x2, by its weight or frequency. Okay, so weight or frequency, and then divide by the total weights or total frequency. Okay, next thing is we have something called expectation. So the symbol for expectation is E of x. It's the expected value. It's a probability distribution. It predicts the average of all possible outcomes. So it's sort of say what should you expect. Okay, so for instance, if this class had 30 students, the next one had 20, the one after that had 20, and then the one after that had 30. So what should we expect? We should expect about an average of 25. We should expect 25 students in our class, but we could get up to 30 or 20. Okay, so that's expectation. Say sum of all, I'm going to go through the formula here. Okay, so this is going to look really weird, the formula for expectation. So this is how it works. It's going to look like kind of an E. Okay, so this symbol, I'm going to get to it in a second. So then we have xi times by the probability. And then at the top we have n, and then we I equals 1. Okay. So this symbol here is called sigma. Sigma. Okay, so sigma represents sum of. Okay, so what happens is we're going to take each x value that we have and multiply it by the probability. Excuse me. So we take the x value times it by the probability. But we're doing the sum of all the x's times the probability. So we just put 1 here, so whatever your first value is, times it by a probability is the first one. But we want the sum of all the x values. Okay, we'll get some examples to show you. So n just represents the final amount, and then I represents the first one. So xi is the first term, and then you can have 10 terms. So your n would be 10. Okay, so we're going from the first value to the 10th value. So each value we're going to multiply by a probability, and if sigma means sum of, so we're going to add them all together afterwards. Okay, so we'll, these are the values or outcomes. This is the probability. Okay, first term, last term. Okay, I'm gonna break this video into 3 parts, so that's just the definition, then we'll get some examples.